Elizabeth Short was murdered in Los Angeles in 1947. Her case drew national attention due to the gruesome nature of it and the mystery surrounding her murderer. She was posthumously nicknamed the Black Dahlia, and police investigated over 150 suspects and came back with 0 arrests. How did this all happen? Well, it goes back to the beginning where her father's car was abandoned on the side of a bridge in Boston and was assumed that he had committed suicide. You see, he ended up losing almost all of his life savings in the 1929 stock market crash, and his car was found abandoned on the side of the bridge, but his body was never discovered. So Elizabeth, as a teenager, had a lot of problems with bronchitis and asthma and such. After surgery, doctors recommended that she move to a better climate. So her mom would send her down to live with family during the Boston winters. And where would she go? She would go to Miami. But then one day her mom got a letter from her dad, who was supposed to be dead, saying, basically, I faked my own death and I've been living this entire time in California. So Elizabeth moved out to California to be with her dad when she turned 18. After about a month of staying with him and getting into too many fights with him, she decided to leave and go back to Florida. Well, now back in Florida, she meets a man named Matthew Gordon Jr., who was a major in the military, and he was training for World War II. Well, I guess during one of the flights, he actually ends up crashing in a plane crash in India. And during his recovery in India, he sends her a letter saying basically he's going to propose to her and that he loves her and he wants to marry her. Before the end of World War II, though, he ends up dying in another plane crash. So Elizabeth decides she's going to pick up her things and move back to California. That's where she becomes a waitress. And on January 9th of 1947, she's dropped off by a man named Robert Manley. This man was married, but Elizabeth was his girlfriend, also on the side. And he dropped her off here at the Biltmore Hotel in LA. Now, nobody knows what happened to her from January 9th till her body was discovered on January 15th of 1947 by a woman named Betty, who was just happening to be walking by and saw a woman like this posed in this position with her hand up above her head. What she didn't realize was that it was a real person. At first, she thought it was just a mannequin because the skin was so white and pale. Now, what you can't see there is right in the middle, her skin was perfectly sliced down the middle. What they said was it almost looked surgical, like a doctor had done it, and her blood was drained all out before her body was moved in place there. This is why it looked like she was a mannequin. Now, her body was completely cleaned with gasoline. Her 2 middle parts were separated by about a foot. The intestines were tucked underneath her buttocks, and she was just placed there by this person. The corners of her mouth were cut up almost to remind you of like the Joker in The Dark Knight. They were slices all the way up to here, creating what looks like a smile on her face. She was ultimately identified as Elizabeth Short when her fingerprints were sent off to police. Now, once she was identified, the Los Angeles Examiner reached out to her mother and said, hey, look, Elizabeth won a beauty contest, lying to her mom intentionally to get information so they could run their news stories, getting as much as they could about Elizabeth, and then eventually at the end of the call saying, oh, by the way, your daughter was actually murdered. That's why we asked you all these questions. But we'll pay for your plane ticket to come out here so you can help investigators. This was another ploy by the Los Angeles Examiner to keep her close so that no other news agencies could release the story. See, this ends up being big-time news due to the whole mystery surrounding this thing, and it becomes the headline news story for 35 days in the nation. Now, on January 21st, 1947, only 6 days after the Black Dahlia's murder, a phone call comes through to the Examiner. The man on the phone gets a hold of a guy named James, and he said, congrats on your reporting, I am the murderer. He then said he plans on turning himself in, but not before he allows the police to pursue him a little bit more. And then says, expect some souvenirs from Beth's here soon. So 3 days later, they receive a manila envelope that's written using magazine clippings. And what basically happens is inside of those things is her birth certificate and a few other personal belongings of her. Then the note also says, a letter to follow shortly. Now, police take this letter and all the information and they try to find fingerprints, but there's no fingerprints on it. These also were all cleaned with gasoline. Interestingly enough, the exact same day that the letter arrived, somebody found on top of a trash can in an alley a handbag and 1 shoe, which ended up belonging to Elizabeth, but they were also cleaned with gas, leaving no fingerprints. Now, on January 26th, the Examiner received another letter, this time handwritten, not written the way that it was with the magazine clipping. That letter read, here it is, turning in Wednesday. January 9th at 10 a.m. Had my fun at police, Black Dahlia Avenger. The letter also told where the location was going to be, but police waited at that location at that exact time and nothing came about. Instead, at 1 o'clock at that time, another letter arrived at the Examiner, this time back to the traditional magazine clipping style. It read, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified." Now, strangely enough, a pair of clothes were found at the beach in Venice, and inside of them was a suicide note. Now, this was about 2 months after the murders, and the suicide note said, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in. So this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that or this. Sorry, Mary." All in all, 750 police officers investigated this case, and the LA police actually gave a $10,000 reward for any information to the suspected murderer. That's roughly about $130,000 in today's dollars. They actually got a lot of fake confessions to the murder. Short's murder has been described as one of the most brutal and culturally enduring in American history. And as of today, no murder suspect has ever been found, making it one of the most infamous murder mysteries in the world.